Hello and welcome to Module 6 of EverydayPBL.com's Beginner's Guide to Project-Based Learning. We've finished the core of our PLP and now we're going to tackle the last bit of it, which is that explicit vocabulary instruction. While not necessarily part of the core PLP, the explicit vocabulary instruction is significant in closing the achievement gap and helping our students be successful. So let's go ahead and check out the explicit vocabulary instruction right there, and then make sure we have our PLP up. Yep, okay. So looking at the explicit vocabulary instruction, this came about with our school's interaction with the Texas Literacy Initiative. As you may or may not know, most of our students are reading barely at level or maybe a few grade levels below. So building their vocabulary is going to be absolutely vital to closing that literacy gap. So let's look at step one now. Step one is a pre-plan, and what you're going to be looking at is you're going to be looking at all the resources you're going to be giving your students. Books, magazine articles, textbooks, and you're going to be looking for idioms, colloquial phrasing, and slang. And what those are those figures of speech or colloquial sayings that we don't necessarily use anymore, or even regional slang. The reason why this is important is because individuals that are not basically in that culture may not understand that phrasing, and so you want to have a mechanism in place to teach that. So moving over to our exemplar, let's take a look. You know what? We have one in my book, the Thomas C. Foster Read Like a Professor. The chapter is called "It's All Greek to Me," which is an idiom that we use to say, hey, I don't get it, And my ELL students who don't have that custom and haven't heard that before, they're going to probably be lost and they're not going to get the pun when they see that. So I'm going to make sure that I mention that and I explain that before we go on. Moving on to step 2 now. Now we have to identify the tier 2 and 3 words. If you have not gone through the explicit vocabulary training, there's a really good link right here that can help you understand the difference between tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 words. So, determine which tier 2 and 3 words you want and will need to explicitly teach. If you can't find tier 2 and 3 words, you might want to consider whether the text is below level. If your list of tier 2, 3 words is 100 words long, perhaps the text might be a little too advanced. Basically, you want to pull out what are the words that are most imperative for our students to gain meaning from the text. Alright, now, the other thing I'm going to say, especially because this is your first project, include some confidence builders in there, especially early on to give them some success with that vocabulary. So, looking at mine, I cheated. Instead of listing all the words, what I did was I went through and I found some Quizlets that basically did the work for me. And so I've listed the 2 Quizlets that have them, but I did pull out the words that I wanted to use right here. What I'll do when I get to the actual project is I will merge these 2 programs into one that'll have all these words on there. Step 3 now, we got to start thinking about the vocabulary routine. We are explicitly teaching these words, so we want to make the words jump off the page. I've had it in my class where we've studied the word, I've front-loaded the vocabulary, and a student will actually shout out, hey, that's one of our vocabulary words. It's a very gratifying experience when they've internalized the words. So how can you make the words stand out and give them meaning within the context? How can you give your students ownership of the vocabulary? Think and look at the different concepts we have here. So, again, going to the exemplars, I'm going to be using Quizlet to give them definitions. The sample sentences will be pulled directly from the text. I haven't located visuals yet, but I'm pretty handy with Google Images, so that's probably where I'll get them. The discussion questions are going to be phased around the tier 3 words, which are the narrative element words, and I don't think I'm going to give non-examples. I think this unit, because it's early, I'm just going to give examples. The one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see about tying in all of the tier 3 words will be in their game board, that's for certain. But maybe offer them extra credit or some kind of incentive if they can bring in these tier 2 words within the gameplay. And then when I look at sentence stems and scaffolding, there are lots of adverbs in my list, so it's going to be very, very fun to teach and maybe see if we can work them into their writing. All right, moving on. Now we're on step 4. Step 4 is the word wall preparation. And we have a nice little quote from Russell Wilson, my favorite quarterback there. You need to use the resources available. If you have not played around with Quizlet yet, it is an unbelievable resource, and it makes your job as a teacher much easier. A word wall is only good if you use it. If you interact with the word wall, your students will interact with the word wall. It can be a significant tool in your class if you utilize it in a productive manner. So when you look at the preparation for the word wall, and we'll look at my exemplar here, all of these things, except for the image source, can be pretty much done through Quizlet. So because I grabbed these 2 Quizlets up here already, a lot of this is taken care of. I just have to format it. Work smarter, not harder. Step 5 is going to be during reading activities. So what are you going to do while you read to bring out these words and highlight these words? Moving forward, I haven't got them all, but I've got most of them. What am I going to do? When we talk about rhetorical, we're going to have a little mini session on rhetorical questions. And that, given my sarcastic nature in class, that might be actually rather fun. The chink, we're going to talk about the chink in the armor, the idiom there. I'm sure they've heard it before. Multitudinous, we're going to talk about the word a lot and how there are so many. There are a lot better ways to say a lot. Anyway, you get the idea. So basically be thinking about how are you going to call out these words and highlight these words as you come across them in the text. Alright, moving down, step 6. Step 6 is our final step in the explicit vocabulary instruction, and it's after you read. What are you going to do? How are you going to incorporate that vocabulary post-reading? Is there a place in the project where students can incorporate that vocabulary? If they're supposed to be experts in engineering, shouldn't they be talking like engineers in their paper? How does the vocabulary fit into the literacy tasks? And then how are you going to ensure that these terms are retained after the project is complete? So I mentioned it already a little bit, and part of my plan is to make sure that the elements of fiction are definitely prominent in their game board design. And then beyond that, see, hey, let's look at these tier 2 words and how they're used within the context of the story. Can we maybe include those in the gameplay as well as using them in their writing? So this has been the explicit vocabulary instruction. Our PLP is now complete and ready for Critical Friends and the 6A's rubric. So I look forward to taking you through those at a later date, but for now you got your PLP done. Show it to your administrator, show it to your department head, show it to your best teaching friends, and see if they have any ideas on ways you can improve it. Thank you for joining us. Good luck